Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar with Microsoft Federal Engineering. So glad you could join us today. My name is Evan Lesser. I'm the founder and president of Clearance Jobs. Happy to be with you guys today. So today's webinar, you're going to hear from Microsoft Federal and Engineering leaders. We're going to take a look into Microsoft technology, culture, and careers, and learn how Microsoft is empowering the planet through work with federal, local, and state governments. Really great opportunity. Happy to have these folks with us. So in a moment, we're going to hear from our panelists, but a couple of quick housekeeping notes. First, everyone will note that our phone lines are muted. I want to make sure everybody can hear without too much background noise. We will be taking questions. You'll see within the GoToWebinar app, there's a small chat feature. You can submit your question through there, and we'll be monitoring those. We'll take as many as we can in our webinar today and write down the rest, figure out some way to get back to you. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lindy Kaiser. Lindy is our senior editor at Clearance Jobs, and she's going to be interviewing the Microsoft panelists today. All to you, Lindy.
Thank you so much, Evan, and thank you, Microsoft Federal and Engineering, for joining us for this webinar and talking to folks about the career opportunities and great things you have going on at Microsoft Federal and Engineering. So with that, I just want to kick off and launch it directly to Coogan and to Dave to discuss a little bit more about who you are and what you do, kind of introduce us to who Microsoft Federal and Engineering is. Coogan, we'll start with you.
Hi. So I'm a technical delivery manager, and what that means is I manage consultants that deliver for our federal customers. So most importantly, Microsoft Federal started about 8 months ago, and of course, the planning happened much further than that back, but we kicked off in July. And what we did when we launched is we took a one Microsoft approach. And what that means is we brought together all the critical customer functions that existed in other organizations across the business, and we brought them all under one umbrella. And what that did was it boosted collaboration and communication, ultimately so that we could better deliver for our government customer. We're about a 2,500, give or take, person organization. And in addition to all the critical customer functions that we put under one umbrella, we also, incredibly important, we took other functions such as finance and HR, and also have a fully dedicated support team for that as well. As many of us know, our government customers have unique requirements, so having that dedicated support team also helps us better deliver so that our customers can realize their technology innovation.
Thanks, Coogan. And on the engineering side, what we have going on is obviously Microsoft is a huge partner with local governments, federal governments, et cetera, as well as doing sovereign work for other countries. So one of the main pieces is, as we know, Microsoft Office has been used by many entities for many, many years. With the advent of our cloud business, Azure, we've been able to pull together quite a portfolio of clients as well as all government entities, as I've said. So what we do normally for our cleared talent is we work in what's called an air-gapped cloud. What that means is it's a separate, non-connected to the internet type of cloud that works for either the US. We're also building those out for other entities in the world. So one of the main pieces of jobs that we have out there are all types of engineering. So if you actually went to azure.com and you pull down the products tab, you will see all the services that we provide out there to our folks using the cloud services. You can dive deep onto those different pieces, and it'll give you a good understanding of where the areas are that we're working on, as well as what we're trying to deliver. And then you can take your skill sets and apply those into learning and be able to find jobs that we have open around the business, around the world, also for our US customers as well with our clearances. Back to you, Lindy.
Great, and so now we know who Microsoft Federal and Engineering is. I want to drill down to each of you individually so we know why we're talking to you today and we get better questions from the folks attending. So just tell a little bit about your role and how you got your career started at Microsoft. And again, we'll start back with you, Coogan, to tell people more.
Sure. So again, I'm a technical delivery manager, which, I manage consultants that deliver for our customers. As Dave mentioned, there's a lot of different types of roles out there that support our government customer. I came to Microsoft about 3.5 years ago. Before that, I was at Deloitte doing consulting, and then before that was a cyber delivery airman, actually, captain in the Air Force. So that's kind of how I got started in the government space, was cleared, then Deloitte did some different stuff, and then actually got brought to Microsoft through an old client of mine that I used to deliver for at Deloitte. She came back to Microsoft and then asked me if I wanted to come. And I said, of course, I want to come to Microsoft. So that's kind of my journey to Microsoft. Again, I've always had kind of my foot in the federal space in one way or another, and I'm very passionate about our mission space. So it's exciting. It's exciting to be able to see the great work that we've been able to accomplish as Microsoft Federal, even within, like I said, the last 8 months. So that's a little bit about my journey. Some of the other work that I do outside of managing consultants is I drive initiatives for our business. Two of the big ones I drive are some of our people programs. So, figuring out, how do we bring on more people, hiring, right? Why we're all here today. And then also, morale and kind of building our culture within federal. So we have a great culture at Microsoft, trying to also figure out what that looks like specific to federal as well.
Great. And next, Larry, I'd love to hear more from you about what role you have now and how you got your start at Microsoft.
Sure. Thanks, Lindy. I've been at Microsoft for roughly 9 years now. It'll be 9 years in July. I started off in the services in the Premier World, which is now part of what we call the CSU. So we kind of transitioned over, and I started mostly as Exchange PFE, working in the Intel space. Really working around Exchange on-prem at the time. Things have, of course, changed a lot over the years, and primarily today work on cloud and cloud delivery, hybrid, a lot of security around cloud, really adopting how our customers can consume and adopt cloud in a world where they typically never have. And that's been a really interesting challenge. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I've moved from CSU to MCS in the last 6 months. So it's a kind of interesting challenge. Very similar work that I'm doing, just under a different organization. And it's been a very good challenge. I came originally from GoDaddy.com. I worked there for several years running their hosted exchange. And previously to that, I worked with the U.S. Army as a contractor, and I can go on and on from there as well. I know a lot of people out in the world other than Microsoft. There's in the exchange world days, being an exchange certificate master at one point in time. So try to stay away from that world as much as I can other than 365, but that'll get pulled back into it once in a while. So kind of a quick background on me.
Great. I love that. Teaching people to innovate and then use the tools they have. And that testimony, Larry was teaching me how to use GoToWebinar just today. So this is what Microsoft can do for you people, teaching you how to use these tools. So now, Tarl, again, same thing for you.
Yeah, thanks, Lindy. I appreciate it. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar today. You're committing some time here that you don't have to commit, so we appreciate that. I am Tarl, like Carl with a T, and I do have to explain that every time I pronounce my name. I've been here at Microsoft now. I'm coming up on 3.5, almost 4 years, so almost the same path as Coogan. And previously, I'd worked in a different hyperscale cloud company, and then scaling back from there in many defense industrial-based companies like Lockheed Martin, Viasat, and also active duty military in the Navy, Go Navy, and the government civilian as well. And it's interesting to see, for me personally, how my journey to here has come about. So in the military, I was really focused in the cryptographic world, and I got a collateral duty one day to build some secure spaces. And I had zero idea what I was doing, but I was an E1, so I just did what I was told. And I was able to learn a trade, if you will, that was different from my job. And I continued in that process as I continued my military career and then moved into the civilian sector. I've continued to grow and build that expertise, and I've brought that here as well. One of my main roles here in the company is to be able to assist in the design, build, and accreditation of our secure spaces for our air-gapped clouds, as Dave mentioned earlier. So I get a very unique reward out of this job, that I get to see something personally here go from nothing to something, and something that will withstand longer than my lifespan, which is really, really neat. So I'm really, again, thankful that you're all here. We have a great panelist here, so I appreciate you taking the time to be here today.
I love that too. You get to build something that will sustain longer than your own lifespan. That's a pretty cool thing to say. And I admit it, Tarl, same thing. I had to Google your name before I announced this thing, because I was like, I don't want to be responsible for screwing that up. Okay. And last but certainly,
I get all kinds.
not least Dave.
Hi, everybody. I want to echo what Tarl is saying. Thank you for taking time out to be with us today. And I did ask Tarl the first time I met him, who names their kid Tarl, but that was a whole another story. That's one of the great things about Microsoft is how open it is, and you can approach anybody, even no matter what level they're at. So my story begins many years ago. I actually was in the Air Force myself. I used to call in airstrikes, so there's not a lot of civilian jobs that call in airstrikes, so I had to kind of learn a new craft, as they say. I did that about 30 years ago. So I've been at Microsoft coming up on 17 years now, and I just love the company. And probably when I talk about some of the things today, it may sound like rainbows and puppies, but I promise you that a decade ago, it wasn't necessarily that way. The growth mindset, I love the ability to be able to come in and really be a learn-it-all instead of a know-it-all. My background is when I first came in, I actually did HR. So I did corporate learning and development for about 7 years, and then I switched over to the engineering role where I came through from SQL to up to Azure. So Azure has been in progress for about a decade or so. So it's been actually being worked on for some time, and I've been fortunate enough to been a part of that from the beginning, to Tarl's point of watching things amazingly grow. And that's from the quality of people that we get in. One of the things that I love about working at Microsoft is just being able to work with the people you see here, the really smart people that every single day you say, meh, 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 and then people just get it and they walk away. We all understand each other. It's similar to what my time was in the military, where you just kind of all work on the same goal and move together. My background also includes working for NREL, which is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Colorado, but I have been in Redmond here for about 17, 18 years. As you can tell, I'm very excited to be here. Lindy, back to you.
Great, thank you. Well, we certainly all probably know Microsoft. I don't think you can live in the world without knowing who Microsoft is, but people might not know Microsoft Federal and Engineering and how you operate specifically in the cleared space. So clearly clearance jobs, visitors, and our community is really interested in the work that goes on in the cleared space. So just talk to me a little about some of the challenges you're tackling within that cleared space. Again, back over to you, Coogan. They always make you go first. Did you notice that?
I know, it's okay. So I'll start and then I'll let Larry kind of give more specific examples because he's kind of on the ground, right? So he's going to have better specifics. But I would say, generally speaking, some of the challenges that we tackle with our customers in the cleared space especially is, just the technology transformation. So some of them are already in the cloud and are super forward leaning. And as we could probably all guess, some are a little bit more hesitant and need a little bit more discussion around, what does security look like? What might that mean for their unique environment? Because a lot of our customers, probably not dissimilar than commercial, feel like their environment is unique. And so some of it's just getting them feeling comfortable, and we meet them wherever they're at. So it's not like, cloud or die. It's, hey, we're going to meet you where you are, and eventually, yes, we'd like to move you that direction, but we're here to get you comfortable. Some are in infancy stages, and like I said, some are ready to go and are already there. So I would say was the biggest challenge for us. And some of that takes soft skills, especially as we navigate some of those complex conversations. And so that's something that I certainly work on with my team, and we work together as an organization to tackle some of those problems. So Larry, I don't know if you want to offer more specifics or build upon that. But.
Sure. So I approach it very much like Coogan, and it's an interesting place to work right now. We're really setting and kind of building what Dave and Tarl said a little bit. We're really building now what Azure was 12 years ago, right? Now, from an engineering perspective, they're building these sovereign clouds, and they're building all these really neat things that eventually these customers are going to move into. But right now on the ground, we're trying to leverage things out there that exist for them to start moving, some of their work to the cloud, so they can start adopting, start learning. And it's a challenge, right? It's always going to be a challenge because historically we live, if you've worked in these spaces, very siloed, very communication and dependent. We don't talk outside our silo. We don't talk even within the organization itself. And now we're breaking down barriers, saying, no, we're going to actually communicate across everybody, and everybody's got to get on board and steer the canoe in the same direction. And that's different, right? It's different in these spaces. And it's interesting how, and we'll talk a little more about it, I believe, in a little bit. And it's kind of interesting building that out and seeing something grow from this idea that will really live, in my opinion, at least, the next 10 to 15 years, and really, really improve the workflow and the way that at least our customers that we're working with today do business, right? And in the end result, what does that mean? It means a more secure nation. What does it mean? Also, it means that the warfighter has better intelligence. It means that the warfighter is safer, and it really does cost lives in the end, right? Maybe not directly. We're not working directly with the warfighter. Well, some of us are, but not all of us. But you all have impact on that, and so it's kind of very, very neat to see this growth, but it has challenges, right? I always take the approach of security first, right? We don't do anything without talking to security. There are other people say, well, we're going to put this product in, or we're just going to go put this 365 thing, and it'll be fine. And what ends up inevitably always will happen, and we've seen it many times, is security come in and says, yeah, who talked to us about all these things? And when you go through it, it's, if you talk to them first and you go through all the iterations and you say, here's what we're doing, here's the big idea, here's the plan for now and the next 5 years, and here's how the basis is how we're going to build this up. They're a lot more receptive than we're going to give you cloud, or we're going to give you mail, and everybody's going to talk to where you never even talked to these people before. So that's kind of the challenges we're dealing with now, and it's been very successful across the board, at least in the spaces I work, and it's really creating mandates and really creating the structure across DoD now as well as from Intel of how these things look, and we're integral parts of all that, which is always good.
I love that. I love that. It's not cloud or die. It's customer security solution, integrating all of that together, and presenting the best options that you have. So that's super. I want to encourage folks, if you have questions, drop them into the chat. We will get to them, but I don't want you to hold them. So if questions come up as you go, again, type in a chat message and send that to us. And if we can't get that to them today, we will be able to get you an answer afterwards. So again, send us your questions. So next, I kind of want to talk to, I'm already excited. Evan, I might need to apply for a job with Microsoft Government. It sounds pretty great. So what does it take to be successful at Microsoft for folks who might be online here and thinking about, kind of pursuing a career path here? And how do you define success as a company, even for folks interested in what your company is doing? I'll turn that to you, Dave.
Sure, and that's a great thought process here. One of the things I will say up front is imposter syndrome. There's so many people who join and or start a new job, and you think, oh no, they're going to figure out I don't know what I'm doing. If we are talking to you for roles, then obviously we think you're going to be great. We think that you'll do a fabulous job at the job that you're doing. One of the things to think about regarding growth mindset, like I talked about earlier, is this Satya coming in as our CEO roughly 7 years ago. And with him coming in, it truly did change the culture of our company. And how do you be successful? In the past, a lot of it was, hey, we're all working on the same thing, but one of us gets the high score, one of us gets the low score, one of us is out the door. Not a great place to feel comfortable, etc. Well, with the new way we think about things over this past 7 years is you're actually held accountable for how you treat others and how you lift others up. All the teams now work together. We do a lot of cross-organizational work. One of the great things about your career is you can be an individual contributor all the way up to the top, or you can be a manager, or you can jump back and forth between being a manager sometimes and working on the IC world, as we say. That allows you a lot of growth potential. That also allows people to realize, hey, I'm a great leader where I come from. I'm the best leader ever. And then you get in and you go, I don't want to be a leader here. I want to do the work, right? That happens. And it's okay. In the past, the only way you could move up was you became promoted to leadership. And so a lot of that's disappeared. And so to be successful at Microsoft, you own your career. There are 150,000 jobs you can have at Microsoft at some point in time. If that's what you want to do, you can do that. I came from in HR, moved over to engineering. I'm literally in a dream job right now where like I sit there every day and think, you guys are paying me to do something that I love to do. It's in my wheelhouse, talking to veterans. I run the cleared talent life cycle for all the cleared space across all the orgs. It's amazing. It allows me to come out here and talk about these things that I love to do, try to get veterans in the company, get other folks in that have those clearances. So specifically to what Microsoft can do for you is what can you do for Microsoft? So go out and learn those skills, look at jobs, look at what's required, and then that's what you need to do. I mean, there's so many different learning spaces out there. LinkedIn Learning is a huge thing that we actually own now. I mean, there's Udemy, there's all these other learning sites that are out there, Pluralsight, etc. and our doc side is excellent as well. If you don't have those skills, we have a lot of programs that allow you to grow into those pieces. As far as on-the-job training, I've never been in a company, I worked for quite a few, that really helps each other, that allows you to grow into the space. One of the great things about having a clearance is it really gives you that knowledge of, you know, how to be OPSEC, you know, how to do all of the different pieces and how to keep things secure, as we say in the military, and be able to apply that and work with people who really want you to be successful. So there are tons of things that you can do inside of Microsoft, and your impact is what will get you promoted. So depending on how well you do your job is one thing, but not leaving bodies behind you to get your job done, that's another thing. It really is a great feeling now to be that learn it all versus know it all. And that's where we're at. Tarl, Larry, Coogan, anything else you want to add to career at Microsoft?
I could add a couple things to build upon a lot of those things we just mentioned. I think a couple things that you mentioned that really struck home with me is the impact we're having, and I kind of talked about a little bit before, is the impact we're having at our customers is global, and it's long lasting. We're changing the way they do business for the last 25 years, right? You guys work in this space, you understand what I mean by that. They're changing the way they have to. This mandate's coming down from their directors, right? There's no choice anymore. The people that were 65 and 70 are now leaving the business. They need to attract millennials. They need to attract different sets of people, and they need new capabilities that they're used to using, right? And that's a big challenge for a lot of people that have historically had a workforce that was generally older. And that's okay too, but but eventually they're retiring and they're leaving. So it's the impact that we're having all across the board and setting the standards and the baselines of how these technologies roll out and the security metrics and how we really control those is long lasting, right? We're setting the new version of STIGs, right? We're setting the baselines for cloud and what cloud means in DoD or cloud means in Intel space. And I need these 5 products or these feature sets that replace my on-prem version of these or supplement them in a way that I'm comfortable. The other thing that you mentioned too is we're not here, and this wasn't always true, we're not here to jump over the next person. We're a team. I'll give you 2 quick examples. We got a WinWire, which is this big broadcast that came out, and the gentleman's like, hey, I'm on this WinWire with you. What did I do? And I said, you helped develop the IP and the stuff that this is built on. You deserve as much credit as me on this project. And that's important because, even though he really didn't have any direct impact for, say, like working on something like that, he brought something to the table that helped facilitate that and made that engagement successful. And the same thing as I'm reusing IP for another gentleman. He goes, hey, I know you're not gonna work on this project. I want to reuse this for IP. Let's make sure you get credit for what you did and make sure that we can show your impact you're having on as a global, on these really large projects that are very, very important to these customers, to make sure that at the end of the day, you get the recognition you need. So a combination of making sure you're bringing your teammates up, because that's only most successful, and everybody learns and everybody moves forward and everybody wins. The government, Microsoft, the people we serve, and again, the people that are out there really sacrificing a lot of their lives out there for us. So that's the main thing for us.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think back when we used to have company meetings inside of Safeco Field, they'd close the roof, it'd get really cold, but it would be awesome. Except the Windows team would cheer for the Windows team, the Office team would cheer for the Office team, and we weren't cheering for each other. And that has really changed now, where if I come up with a great idea, so we have hackathon every year. We have tens of thousands of our employees take basically a week off to go and network and work on projects that other people have come up with, or even yourself. And it really allows you to grow and be successful and network. I mean, there's people that I met through hackathons that I would never have met in a million years because we're a pretty large company. But now you have the ability to create something, to what Tarl said earlier. You create something and suddenly, next thing you know, Xbox Adaptive Controller is out there in the wild for people who can't use a regular controller. I mean, those came out of hackathon. So we have a lot of different things here. I would say another thing about success is you really have to believe in yourself. There's a lot of confidence pieces here. You are where you are in your career because that's where you are. If you want to move forward, keep learning. This is going to be a shocker to some people, but I've actually had 23 managers at Microsoft in 17 years. And the reason is mostly because I've been the one moving around, because I've changed. Microsoft is able to not be like a big tanker that takes forever to turn. We are pretty agile for as large of a company as we are. So then you are as well. So you have the ability to come in here and be successful based on your ability to say, okay, we're not doing this anymore because that's not what the customer wants. So we're going to go over here and do this. Hey, the team's changed over here, and that's how it ends up. It's not a reflection on bad managers or I'm a manager killer. It's based on the fact that you have the ability to totally reinvent yourself every single year if you want to. And that's one of the beauties of having success here. Tarl, Coogan, anything else to add?
I'll defer to Coogan. Oh, Wendy, go ahead.
Only other, go ahead.
No, I want to hear what you have to say, Coogan, and then I'll do my next lead in.
Okay. Only other thing I was going to add is definitely agree with what Larry and Dave said. And I think, a lot of places can say, oh, we're collaborative, but when you look at how we, incentivize our people, those two things don't line up, right? Microsoft, that's not the case. We absolutely incentivize people to collaborate. We actually have things called core priorities that are built into the bonus each year. And yes, of course, a component of that is individual accomplishments, but the other two components are, how did I work with others? How did I build off of others? And that says a lot to me that, essentially we put our money where our mouth is. That's huge. So couldn't agree more with the collaboration and the not stepping on others to get ahead piece. So.
Yes, we got a question came in through the chat. We've had a lot, so I'm tracking them here, and we'll get to as many as we can. But somebody had mentioned the teams aspect, which you're really highlighting here. But in a job listing, they only see kind of the job qualifications and criteria. How do you get an idea for the teams that you'll be working on, or how those teams interplay through a job description? Or maybe you can even speak to that, like when you're hiring folks for your teams, do they know what team necessarily they'll be assigned to when it's tied to that position, or how do you kind of build out that team structure for a new hire?
So for mine,
can answer
they would know they're going into federal, right? But not specifically to the manager necessarily. Sometimes it goes, I have, 17 recs open right now. They're not all coming on my team. We hire lots of people. I think last year we hired 550 people in my old domain. So you'll know generally what organization, at least for the hires I do, certainly within federal, and that you're going to be in consulting. But it's broader than that. There's lots of other opportunities at federal that aren't just consulting, but I think that would be specific in the rec that should say, Microsoft Federal or product group or whatever, engineering. So.
Yeah, and similar on the engineering side, and Dave brought up something on Azure.com in a second that I'll tie to, but in all of the recs that folks look at, you can tell pretty quickly what the main organization is that you're looking at. So speaking primarily from the Azure or the O365 engineering side, it'll be clear, what that is. But one thing you could do to kind of further understand like how that ties into the bigger picture is, going to Azure.com, like Dave said, you can get a broader picture of where compute fits into the Azure cloud, or where data or Cosmos or SQL or O365 fit into the broader cloud. And you can do, open source research to see how those organizations have dependencies on other organizations to build the cloud, or how they are a dependency for other organizations to build the cloud. And you can start to put together a little bit of a mind meld for how a role will interact with other teams that are in the company at large. But to Larry and Dave and Coogan's point, I almost said Keegan, I don't know why, to their points a minute ago, the way that we interweave together as a company is different in a great way that I have not seen anywhere else before. We specifically do work holistically across various groups, and no longer try to work in stovepiped mentalities. I wasn't here during the pre-Satya days, so I'm only getting to benefit from his leadership and his direction and the way that he's brought an empathetic mindset to the company. But I personally get to interact across 20s and 30s of organizations that I am delivering things for. And it's a really, really neat way to grow my network, to learn more about other organizations, and maybe even see things that could benefit me in a different career here at the company, or benefit people on my team for something that they may want to go do that they have expertise in, but didn't come into that organization to start.
I want to jump in for 1 second, and I'll be real short because I know we got to move to the next question. But one thing I want to say is that Teamsters is a very generic term, right? We have the team that where you live on, like Coogan's team, right? Then we have the team we work and play with every day, right? I'm not exaggerating. Every single day I get on the call with 9, 11 people now who are working on a very similar project for the last year and a half. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this. They say, we're brothers or brothers and sisters on that call, because we're on there every single day and we talk about life as well as work, and things like that. And it's a very close-knit group, and we help support each other.
Did he freeze for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least it's a good freeze, at least. It could be worse. So.
Yeah.
Join the teamwork.
I was just going to add one last thing, if you don't mind. I was also going to say, if you're applying and you're not sure, ask the recruiter. If you make it to an interview loop, ask. The biggest thing, and we'll get on to interviews in a second, I think, but, ask the question. I mean, you're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing you. So if you're not sure, I've many times kind of explained things to people. We are a big organization. We are complex. And so just ask the question is what I would say if you're not sure from the rec.
Yeah, and we have a ton of service members and folks transitioning veterans on the call. So Matt Storm said, "Go Navy, Semper Fi." That's painful for me to say. Go Army is what I would say. I don't know, Air Force, do you even have a slogan, Air Force people? I don't know.
Aim high.
Go Air Force. Think Navy.
But we also, so Matt, Elizabeth Anderson, a couple of folks had questions about location. And so we do want to talk a little bit about location and then COVID response. So how has Microsoft responded to the pandemic, both for employees and for customers? We'll start with Tarl on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Lindy. And the answer is complex. COVID really shocked the world. I mean, candidly, everybody knows that. Everybody is living this today. When I look at it from, me personally as a person, I have never experienced something like this in my lifetime, coupled with never experiencing something like this in a cleared environment, coupled with never experiencing something like this in a hyperscale cloud company that needs to run 24/7. It is complex and it's ever changing. But what I saw that really brought me great joy and great hope, and I'm in the office, like I got my mask here, like we got all these protocols in place, was Microsoft was quick to react in right and true ways with the data that we had on hand at the time. From a business side, on the engineering side, we spun up a V team across different organizations and HR and all of the engineering teams to be able to figure out how we were going to address this in our secure work areas, how we were going to enable people to still be able to do their jobs that are required to be inside of certain facilities and can't do it from home. And we started just really kind of pushing forward with our occupational health and safety teams to over clean and ensure we had standoffs and actually remove desks in some regards to ensure that we had separation requirements that are required. And we just continually every single day, and I kid you not, every single day we're reiterating and reevaluating what was the right thing to do at the time based on the data that was there. Because whether we like this or not, the pandemic proved that perception is sometimes also reality. Some parts of the world, it is a much graver pandemic. Here in the Pac Northwest, while it hit us like very hard, and in fact we were kind of the epicenter to start it, so don't blame us. It was in Kirkland, Washington. It actually, we as a state, we as a city, started to really enforce rules that let us go down on the scale, if you were. But that didn't mean that we changed our approach and lightened up as a company either. So we really put forth a lot of really great efforts here in the company, and even at our, when our government customers were come here, they were and are still impressed with the rigor that we put them through when they come here. So a couple other quick things to touch on specifically for that. We also just recently afforded everyone in the company 5 additional well-being days on top of our regular vacation and sick days. It was clear to our senior leadership team that people need to be able to, in addition to their vacation time, and not everybody could take vacation this year because of the pandemic, we needed a way to show everyone that mental health and well-being in a time like this especially is key. And candidly, my leadership team has really shown tangible ways that they are encouraging us to take that time, literally pushing off business deliverables to ensure people are able to take those times. We also rolled out some pandemic paid leave, some COVID leave tied back to if you were to test positive and go into quarantine, that you would get paid time off for that. And then we have benefits for parents to get childcare, educational coverage, all kinds of resources. So, I mean, I know every company, really tackled this head on. But I get joy and I get really good sentiment from the company here because I've seen tangible ways that we've really addressed this. And one last piece I'll end on here for me, and then I'll turn it over to Larry, Coogan, or others, is I kind of got collateral dutied to be, the COVID guy for engineering, right? We have a whole group that handles it for the company. I partner with them a lot. I am still working every single day and iterating every single day on anything that we need to do to ensure that people remain health and safety and have a perception that they are healthy and safe in the work areas that we have that they have to do here on campus. So it was quite a cultural shock. We have 20s of thousands of people that come to campus, like right outside this window here every day. They have not been here in a year. We've had essential personnel only. So just, I guess I would encourage you to know if you are coming to this company and you're thinking about how we address health, safety, well-being, mental health, etc. Microsoft puts a huge emphasis on employees as a whole. So I'll pause there for a moment so anybody else can weigh in, please.
Hopefully my internet doesn't cut off this time. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, it's what I mentioned, that work, depending on the group, again, Tarl is in a totally different group, which is neat perspective to hear because he's on campus, which I don't get to see anymore as much as I used to, right? But the idea is a lot of initiatives, contrary to popular belief, were on the table in a lot of these spaces to help with remote work and help with a new world. We talked about a little bit ago how people work today and attract new talent and become more efficient and do those things. Those things have been on the table way before COVID. What happened with COVID is working on these projects, and they put a priority on them. Were hot for the people working on them, but not hot for the actual agencies or departments that were running them, right? Like, we know this is important, and And then COVID hit, and then it became, wow, this is really important because what if there's a natural disaster or a nuclear strike or a pandemic and all these things, and we really need a capability of working from home. And accelerated all of these projects where now we're seeing constantly things now coming to fruition. We got one of the directors of one of the major agencies came along and said, we've increased their telework 550%. They never worked from home. Now they have personnel working from home every single day. They have a snowstorm, they still work. They can still work on mission. They, if they have a major pandemic like it is right now, they can work from home. It shifts with depending on what color it is. So that really accelerated their needs. But from a Microsoft perspective, that allowed us, for a lot of our customers, not everyone, because it's not how it works, but for a lot of our customers to work from home. So we worked a lot of huge projects and huge initiatives for very sensitive customers from our house. Now, we made, things that say we have to have special laptops and all the things that work on some of these things, which makes sense. And they've done their due diligence to do it. But we were able to work from our houses. I don't live in DC. I used to travel for 8 years, every single week to DC. That was my choice. I haven't been to DC more than twice in the last year. And this is probably the first time I've been in the Cleveland office where I live in a year. So, maybe 3 times in a year I've had to actually go in for some things. And some of the things were, more sensitive and why I had to go in. And that's okay. But I was comfortable to do that. Microsoft didn't force me to do that. That was my choice to do that. And I was comfortable doing those type of things. It's just to say that depending on the work environment, we've been very good about allowing our employees to do what they're comfortable with. If you're comfortable going into office like Tarl is and I am right now, great. If you're not, and it can be accommodated and it can be arranged, we definitely made it work.
Great. So I put up the slide. The first link here is a link to the Cleared Career site. I want to make sure folks who are on the line definitely have the links to that. The second is to the Cleared community on LinkedIn that you guys have. So we've had a couple questions in the chat. How do people find out more information about careers or get connected with careers? So those are the two links to hit up, folks. We'll send this to you after the webinar as well. I do want to pivot. We have a ton of questions coming in the chat. Obviously, a lot of folks hungry for that delightful Microsoft career experience. So how do you, what makes a great applicant? What are you looking for in someone that joins your teams? How do you make applications stand out? A few veterans have asked about onboarding. There's someone who did the MSSA program who chimed in on the chat, so maybe you can speak to that. So career pathing, basically, how do you get applications to stand out? How do veterans stand out? And then also somebody asked if you're willing to sponsor the security clearance process for applicants who don't currently have one. So a lot of questions in a little bit, but yeah, start with you, Larry.
I want to take one thing you just asked, and especially for veterans, your experiences matter. And what I mean by that is they really matter. We have projects that we literally brought DoD police officers who not work at Microsoft as customer success managers and working on projects that were policemen, but their perspective and their knowledge of just from a historical knowledge of how these things work is invaluable. It helps us adopt properly, right? Because I've never been a warfighter on the ground, right? I've never been a policeman, but having that experience and their willingness to learn, right, and come on board and say, I'm going to come and I'm going to work with Microsoft, and I may not know everything under the board, but I bring my experiences with me, and my experiences are valuable. And so don't ever feel like I don't have the skill sets. Like, I think it was Dave. It was Dave said, well, it was Tarl. I forgot. We said, he used to call it airstrikes, right? I mean, what are you going to do with that, right? Or I met a guy who made bombs once, and what are you going to do with that, right? Other than working Raytheon, there's not much else you can do. But your experiences in those organizations are valuable, and that's all. That was one of the things I wanted to say to that.
Yeah, and I'll weigh in on some of those other pipelines, like where do we get folks from the military, et cetera. So that's kind of my day job. It is my day job. Making sure that we get folks in, specifically. So we think of it in three areas. So we think of industry, we think of military, and we think of university. So those are kind of our three main ways that folks will get into our company. Obviously, the folks that are getting degrees in computer science, et cetera, we have an entire recruiting class out there that monitors all those things. You'll see them on campus, etc. I would look at that as if you are working towards those degrees, etc., that you connect now. We have internships so that come in, even cleared internships. So we have folks that come in. So I'll hand it to Tarl after this regarding how to get sponsored as far as clearances go. But looking at the next piece is we have veterans who go to college afterwards as well. So there's a different path there for the university pieces. Let's talk about industry. So industry is where we get a lot of the folks in. So we do regular events. We even have a little thing called Friday Finals Days where we have folks come in from events. So we'll have networking events that are about SWEs with software engineers or PMs, etc., with clearances. And that drives quickly into interviews as well as offers. So I run a day, twice a week scrum where we have all the hiring managers across roughly 24 organizations inside of Microsoft that all need cleared talent. And we sit there and we say, this person, and we assign them out. So it goes pretty quick, actually, if you are connected in onto that piece. So if you guys see any events that pop up, and I would say this, Dave-Wright-Microsoft is my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. I'll set you in the right thing. I also tend to like different pieces and showcase those events, and that'll allow you to kind of see what's going on. I'm happy to connect with anybody onto that. So then the next piece is our military piece. So our military piece is run by our military affairs team. It's kind of philanthropic to one degree and also for Microsoft for another. So MSSA itself will roughly graduate 94% of people that attend the course. Of that 94%, 85% actually work for companies outside of Microsoft, and we have roughly 15% that come in and work for Microsoft. And the reason for that is we want to be able to help veterans get those skill sets, etc., to be able to apply to any type of work in the tech world. And we hope you come back to us at some point someday. We also have a new thing that I've just put out there, Launch Code. So it's a nonprofit in St. Louis, and it allows you to not have any coding experience at all, and you have the ability to sign up for that. If you have the TS clearance, you should take a look at that on my page, and we'll be able to hire roughly 40 people into Microsoft by October, and that is taking them and walking them through site reliability engineer training, and then you'll come straight into the company. So we have many different ways that veterans can get into there. Reach out to me, I'll connect you into the military page, etc. But those are kind of the main three areas that we look at. I don't know if anybody, Lindsay, I don't know if anybody else needs to talk about that, or if you need to jump to something else.
I'm here for you guys. I mean, I think we have a ton of, Tarl, go ahead, you can jump in.
I think Coogan was gonna talk about how to make a resume stand out. I think she has some very unique examples there.
Yeah, and sorry, I have a little delay, so that's why I'm waiting. Yeah, I would say in terms of, I definitely agree with Dave, right? We do the same thing in federal. We have weekly hiring events and things like that, so feel free to reach out to me as well. I don't have a hyphen, my name's pretty unique. So yeah, feel free to reach out. But I would say in terms of resumes, so, you know, for me being prior military, and many of you probably are as well, I would say the biggest thing that you can do for your resume is to make it clean and straightforward. You know, for me, even when I came out of the Air Force, I used to have every little different organization I worked for, and it was like 15 different, you know, things listed. You know, I will understand that as a hiring manager because I was in the military, but you may not get a hiring manager who was in the military. So I would say, you know, ops commander, you can, or whatever it is, you can clean it up and make it simple terms. That's the best way. And then, you know, of course, explain what it was that you did. But to Larry's point, you know, military experience is incredibly valuable. If nothing else, you know how to lead, you know how to work on teams. Doesn't matter what, if you're an officer enlisted, it doesn't matter. Your experience is valuable. And so that's what I would say is like the simplest way to clean up your resume, is just to kind of take out all of the superlative military jargon, because again, you may not have a hiring manager that knows that. So
we have tons of articles about that. And so we will get to, you know, a lot of these questions. Again, if we can't get to your question now, we'll certainly respond to it later. But I do want to think, somebody asked about Microsoft certifications. So if you're a highly motivated person, again, maybe you have GI Bill benefits to use, you really want to work for Microsoft. Are Microsoft certifications a good way to do it? And then I know Larry wanted to talk to you a little bit about, you know, all of the work that's going on with the cloud there. Are there still need for tech professionals who don't have cloud experience, and how do you kind of skill people up into those roles?
Yeah, I could take that part of it. The certifications are important at Microsoft. It demonstrates, you know, your ability to understand at a high level what you're doing. But that being said, it's not the end all be all of everything, right? It tells me you're able to study and pass a test, not necessarily do it under fire or for a customer, and that's okay. The real thing about on-prem is we still need it, right? On-prem, you guys know this. You work it, most likely. If you're military, you know. If you're a contractor, you know. You most likely you're running on-prem System Center or the on-prem Exchange, or you're running some Citrix on-prem, and that's the life that the majority, right, because of obvious reasons, that these customers live. Now, there's mandates to stop that, right, from directors across the board, to start working more on class, to stop doing so much work on the high sides, right? But that's not the case, right? So there's a lot of need for Microsoft people to be on-prem. There's a lot of need to be some Microsoft person that sits in a SCIF, you know, 40 hours a week plus whatever that is, right? That's not a bad thing, and we need those people. But Microsoft is a cloud company, so it's also important for your own investment in your own self, right? to make sure that we're learning cloud, that you're looking at the customer from a cloud focus first, and say, yeah, we're doing System Center, but this is all stuff that we can move somewhere else, right? Or, hey, we're doing this right here, we're doing this exchange right now. Why are we not moving this 365 for this particular customer? What are the initiatives? And there may be initiatives going on. That's the main thing. Networking and understanding what's going on is really important. But being able to look at your customers and say, you know, this could save you a lot of money, right? This could save you a lot of time. This could make you more productive. And even though you're on-prem, by understanding some of the cloud work, will really make you a better person inside their offices, right? Not just for Microsoft, but for them. The flip side of it is that there is cloud work. There's a misnomer out there is no cloud work. I would do cloud all the time. 4 years ago, I made a decision not to do on-prem, very little on-prem. I've worked a lot of the security, a lot of mobility, and that's how we kind of played into it. And now we're doing full-on infrastructure, full-on, you know, whole networks and whole designs for customers up in the cloud. And with the sovereign clouds coming online, that's only going to expand, right? Once these secret clouds and the TS clouds and these other sovereign clouds are being done for other governments, not that this particular case, there's going to be need for those people, and it's going to only exceed. But by getting your foot in the door, even with on-prem work, it's not a bad thing, because it's not like, okay, you came here knowing System Center, you came here knowing Exchange, you came here knowing these older stack items. There's no way I'm going to be successful at Microsoft, but especially in this space, that is not a true statement. But it does behoove you to really lean forward to cloud, you know, as your career grows. I hope that makes sense.
And so we have more technical questions coming in. Somebody's asking about coding languages, if there are certain coding languages or technical skills that are most in demand. Would any of you like to speak to that, if there's certain?
Dave, can you, from a recruiting on the engineering side, can you take that from what most of our engineering managers are looking for, whether it be C#, you know, Python, Java, et cetera? Can you touch that from a language standpoint?
Yeah, and you pretty much hit on the main ones right there. So scripting, PowerShell. So a lot of folks who don't have experience in software development, etc., come into Microsoft as site reliability engineers. So what we see with that is that PowerShell, the scripting, the C#, you know, definitely Python for sure. The language piece there will also depend on, if you just look at the requisitions that are in the career site. One of the things I did want to say is the aka.ms cleared careers. If you cycle down to the bottom and look at more jobs, it'll actually pull up a filter on the left-hand side for you that'll allow you to kind of filter out locations, areas, skill levels, etc. When you're looking at roles, obviously think about what you're trying to do and what you bring to the table, and learning those skill sets, and those will be listed inside there under requirements. And that's where what I said earlier about going out and trying to learn those different pieces. But Tarl's right, I would say those are the base languages that you need to know to be successful transition. Obviously, if you are already a software developer, then you're going to basically C# is going to be your main piece that you're going to go with.
Yeah, and I would say for us in federal, sorry. So I would say same, C#, PowerShell, Python, Linux, SQL. I mean, it's not a must-have, but those are nice to have depending on the role. Again, we're hiring for all different types. So I think the main thing is, you know, go with what you know, and, you know, don't be shy. If even in the interview or in the rec, if you've got most of it, you know, I would say go for it and try. But again, when in doubt, ask the recruiter. Those are typically the skills we look for as well in federal. So.
And I want to be transparent. I am not a programmer by any means. I can do PowerShell and some Azure functions and things like that, but I'm on the other side of the house, whereas like programming, yeah, go somewhere else, talk to that guy. But I want to be very clear about some things too. The skill sets you have today will adapt to what we're doing in this space, but they're going to be different in 6 months. And the reason why I say that is cloud is moving so fast that and I hear this from a lot of just, you know, a lot of ICs, a lot of people that we work with on day to day, contractors. How do we keep on top of our skill set? And the bottom line is you just got to keep growing, and you got to keep learning and keep adapting, and keep looking and seeing what's new and saying, this is 3 months out. My customer will need this. Let's start prepping today and understanding it. So when it lands, we can land that product in. I've landed products in to very, very sensitive accounts within 2 to 3 days of launch, right? Because we needed those capabilities and we didn't have them, right? So the backstory is that yes, skills today, programming is a little different. skills that you may have, it's like, I don't have programming skills. I'm more of a, infrastructure guy that does server work. Sure. That's IaaS. There's things we need, all those things, right? Those things do transition to cloud work, believe it or not. It is different. But learning how to do ARM templates from my side, how to be able to do DevOps, how to use an agile model, how to take and push something in a pipeline. That's all applicable, right? Infrastructure as code is a big thing we're really pushing for consistency and reliability and being able to update fast. So those are kind of things that we use, from a code perspective. But again, you're going to be learning new things. Even if you're doing one thing today, tomorrow you'll be like, hey, this new thing's coming and it's completely revolutionizes everything I did yesterday. And then you have to adapt and move forward. So don't let your skill sets today put you off saying, I just don't feel comfortable. Like, I'm not going to learn, or I'm not going to know this stuff, and I'm not going to be successful. Because as long as you're willing to put the effort and it's flexible and you put the time in, you will be successful. That's the key.
Yeah, one quick thing onto that. So the software development lifecycle, know that on all the way through. We used to take 3 years to deliver software. Now we basically do it semester based every 6 months with sprints, etc. So learn how to do agile development. That will be really make you more successful.
And just because you don't do code doesn't mean you don't need to know it, because we use it too. Like I said, infrastructure as code uses that same thing. So.
Yep.
Awesome. We are almost at time. We've been talking to you guys for an hour, you poor people, and have had more questions than I've ever gotten on any other webinar. So we missed a ton of them, but again, we will follow up. A lot of folks asking about MSSA, a lot of veterans asking transition questions, a lot of direct career application questions. Again, connect with these folks on LinkedIn, send them a personal introduction, tell them how beautiful they were and amazing they were. But the last minute, I'd love to just hear rapid fire from each one of you. Kind of talk about one of the most rewarding things you found about working for Microsoft in the cleared space. Start with you again, Coogan.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, Microsoft in general, I have to say this, not just the cleared space. To me, it's our culture. And you probably get tired of hearing that, but it's really true. I heard it before I left Deloitte, and I had a lot of people at Deloitte ask me, is it really true? And I said, it really is true. So for me, cleared or not, that's number one for me. In terms of the cleared space, what's neat for me, managing a team that works all across different customers, Larry's in the intelligence community, VA, DoD, all different types of customers, is the incredible mission impact that we have. And I think a lot of us in government, that's for me what draws me to government space. So it's just, as we've said before, the ability to really change a machine that's very slow to change, and we're driving innovations at a rapid pace, and especially COVID candidly helped a lot. As much as COVID was horrible, that's one thing that did help, is people realize the need for some of this change. So for me, that's the coolest thing about working in the federal space.
So I'll quickly go. I know I've talked a lot here. For me, Microsoft-wise, Microsoft has a giving campaign every year, and to date, Microsoft and matched by Microsoft, employees and matched by Microsoft, employees have given $2 billion with a B dollars to charity and through time, etc. That's just amazing to me. You're working with people who care. On the cleared space, it's really great for me to try to get as many veterans as I can into the company because that teamwork, that camaraderie, that just understanding that we need to get something done and it needs to be right. Same with military, right? People's lives are on the line. That's the same thing with what we work on in the cleared space as well. It also is very key that we are accurate, and I work with a lot of people who care, and that really makes me happy. Tarl?
Yeah, Dave, you touch on one thing that's near and dear to my heart too, and that's the Give campaign. Just to touch a little bit broader on that, and this is public information, so folks can go look it up. I am a giver, right? I like to be able to give to charities that mean something to me, and there are thousands of charities registered in the Microsoft Give process that we have, where Microsoft will match my giving to that company, or sorry, to that organization, up to a specific dollar amount every year. And they do that for every single employee. So the scale there is just huge, 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 huge. The second thing I'll touch on is I have found great joy in an inherent trust and respect that is given from other Microsoft employees to other Microsoft employees and vendors that work here, even if we don't know each other, even if we're in different organizations. I can go and sit down at a table in a room with 5 different organizations sitting at that table. And there is inherent trust and respect at that table. And that has not always been the case in all the jobs I've been in. So that brings me it keeps me fired up about working here. Larry?
Yeah, I've kind of mentioned it before, but my major driving factor is we're building things and I'm part of projects that will last, right? We're changing the way my kids will be affected by the projects we're working on, if that makes sense, without digging too much into it. The way this government functions and the things that come out of the mission space because of that will affect this nation and my children, and that's important to me. And making it, a secure and reliable and a great place to be that should last, until the next version of cloud comes out, right? Whatever that will be. So, being able to work at such scale and be able to have that kind of impact as an individual is a pretty amazing thing. And working and as a team too. I mean, as an individual, I say me, but we are part of a team that does it. But as an individual, I'm not a manager, whatever I mean by that. So even though I lead teams of people, and we're doing things like that, it's just the impact that we have is tangible, and it's not just something small. It's something that, again, that I see on the news, which is amazing when I do, right? And when you see that in the news and you see the impact you have and the good things you've done without really necessarily always getting the front, the glory of it, which isn't important to me, from an outsider perspective, right? You do internally. It's just great to see that. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We got so many good questions. So thank you for our attendees for really being engaged and listening and dialoguing. That makes such a difference. So I know we have a lot of hopefully future Microsoft employees who have joined us in the chat today that you'll get to follow up with later and have a part of your team. And again, thank you to Coogan and Dave and Tarl and Larry for your time. Thank you to Evan Lesser, founder and president of clearancejobs.com, for kicking us off. And again, thank you to everyone for participating. We really appreciate it. We will follow up to the questions we didn't get to.